Hello and welcome to RITP Podcast. This is Kokeb McDonald and I'm glad you're here with me. Today I wanted to bring this conversation because I just got off our monthly Q&A call inside RITP Certification Program, and we were talking about exactly these things, and I thought it would be important for us, or for me, to actually come and share with you while this topic is really fresh in my head. And I took a couple of notes to make sure that I'm sharing with you exactly what I wanted to share with you. So if I'm looking away, that's what I'm doing. If you know of any therapists, service provider, OTs or PTs, clinic owners, people who work with kids and wanted to put movement activities and reflex integration, sensory integration, really wanted to use a treatment planning process that is almost curated for them to help them create this approach from start to finish, share our podcast with them. I think it will be great for them. And also, I wanted to hear from you. I wanted to put that out there. But today, I wanted to talk about screening and to go beyond reflexes. So I titled this more of Beyond Reflexes, like 3 essential areas to consider in screening, in pediatric screening, or even if you work with adult. These are the 3 essential areas. Of course, there's a lot more. You can go in depth, but I wanted to give you a broader, almost like a focused area and what to think about. Okay, so when screening children, especially in reflex integration work, when you're looking at reflex pattern, it's not just about the reflex pattern or the reflex integration or the activation that we're looking for, but we also need to look how the body moves in general. What skills have they accomplished, have not, what skills have emerged or emerged improperly, and how the child connects with the therapist or with you. So think about the emergence of that skill. Think about if it's done correctly, has anything been skipped, and think also about the connection that the child is having with you, environment, and with the parent and the caregiver. Okay. The first one is to start with the reflex pattern screening. If this is something you're learning, you can start with reflex pattern. So that will involve observing the movement patterns. It can be a retention or integration. Retention means after a certain period of time, these reflex patterns are supposed to be dormant. This should not be being firing. Otherwise, our movement would not be coordinated and we'll have difficulty in the way we move or in the way we function. So that is one of them. The other one is integration. When we are thinking about integration, it can be complicating for some people, but the simplest way to think of it is like, can I see it in this child's body? Or is it integrated in the body? This movement pattern is integrated in the body that the child is now voluntarily able to move part of the body without the reflex kicking in and making the movement uncoordinated. So that's one way to think about it. We want to have the brain-body connection that the child can move freely with smooth movement, with movement efficiency. And you can identify what's missing, what's delayed, what they're compensating. When you're screening for reflex, you might see other reflex pattern kicking in. That's why even in our Q&A today, we're talking about the child. We're screening the TLR, for instance, but then while we're so focused on the TLR, we cannot be missing what's happening in the rest of the body. The child's feet is moving. You can see actually when we're activating the reflex pattern for the TLR, you can see the Babinski kicking in and going into that flexion inversion and being able to see that and not only focused on what you're triggering, but also how the body's compensating. Sometimes that's how you might see these reflex pattern kicking in. That's the ability to see and observe your client holistically, but not super focused, okay? And then, of course, screen through play and natural environment. In natural movement, sometimes you might screen in a very controlled, structured way, but that's not going to work with everybody. Sometimes you won't see it because the child is so focused and organized in the activity that you might not see that reflex pattern. But then when they're playing, you see it. When you go in the classroom, you see the challenge the child is facing. So the ability to screen for reflex patterns or these overflows is not just in active, structured way. So you want to be able to see it in a environment that's more natural to them. So Now, going beyond just this reflex pattern screening, there are three additional areas that we want to talk about and screen for you to assess. The first one is functional movement patterns. So, what you want to look for is, for instance, transitional movements. That can be the child is moving from sit to stand. Can they squat? Can they squat and stay in that position and be able to stand up? Can they go from crawling to sitting to standing or even from high kneeling to pull up and to balance and then take steps? You get the idea, right? The transitional movement, that's functional movement pattern. Can they roll? Can they crawl? All those kind of things. The other one can also look into can be core stability and postural control. Are they stable during these movement, or are they slouching or maintaining patterns that mimics a reflex pattern? So in the classroom, you can go in and assess. You can see the certain reflex pattern are so strong in their body that their posture is affected. So that might be something you're going to look into through the functional movement pattern. We want them to go through that. We're not just isolating these reflexes. We are actually working on functional skills. We want to look at bilateral coordination. This can be, can they move both sides of the body? Is there a differentiation between right and left, and down, front and back? And then the combination, those are the ones we want to see. That's when you want to see fluid movement and their ability to perform in those functional tasks. So number one, that's your functional movement pattern. And then the second one will be the developmental milestone. You want them to go through these developmental milestone. Nature has it beautifully, and we don't want to skip it. If it's skipped, something is off and you want to work on it, assess. For a child who is older, obviously, you're not going to remember everything as a parent. And as a therapist, you might get a report, but you're not going to get everything. So the easiest one is to just have them go through the functional movement pattern or these developmental milestones that you want to check, see how they progress through it and your assessment or history of the child, and ask as much as possible, have they missed any of the milestone, skipped, or was difficult for them? See which one is difficult, and then you can assess more in depth in your session. Or delay timing. Did skills emerge significantly later than typical age expectation? And then also you want to look at the quality of movement. Even if the milestone were met, were they done with ease or they compensated a lot? These are areas that you want to look at. Of course, the earlier, the better. And if you get them earlier, you can help the parents through the progression. And when you give out home programs, you can match where they're at. So that's number two, which is developmental milestone. The third one is where we are talking more about, and lately we've been bringing this more in our RITP training and as a complementary training that we're having inside our program that you're welcome to, is to think about communication and also connection. Of course, there's a speech aspect of that, so we're going to leave that to our speech therapist when it comes to language and articulation. I'm talking about connection and communication with the child. Can be joint attention. Does the child share a focus, engage with the people or with the environment? How do they engage with their surrounding? With a toy, how do they interact? How do they interact with us? How do they interact with the family? And in general, with the environment, you want to get at the sense of that child and see how are they functioning. Social skills can be one of it too. Is there back and forth? Are they meeting their developmental milestone for social skills? Are they playing? Are they interacting? They're laughing, they're engaging. That is them connecting socially with others. That's something you want to look into. And another one under that is body awareness and emotional expression. Does the child understand where they are in space in relation to others? And also not just in space, but also in communication. Is their expression, can they mimic facial expression, right? Social engagement. So all of that come and play because reflex integration is not an isolated treatment. It's really a foundational way that here in RITP we use. That's where we treatment plan. We start with reflex integration because that's what we found is the foundational. But there reflex integration, sensory integration, and sensory processing all work together. They're not separate. So the way the child is responding to the environment is a sensory input. It's getting either auditory, touch, anything else, like vestibular, proprioceptive, all those kind of things. Sound, all that is them taking on sensory input and then how they respond. So we want to understand as much as possible how their body is responding, if there's any reflexive pattern, and also how they are engaging back with the environment. So how are they perceiving it? As much as we can try to take data, but we're not in their body, so we cannot understand 100% how they're perceiving it. But we can take data and how they're responding to it and how to respond without making any judgment on the way they're responding, but really by collecting data. Oh, this is how they're responding to this sensory input, to play or to somebody near them. We can do a very non-judgmental way of responding to the reflex pattern. Yeah, we can say whenever I turn his head to the right, his elbows buckle, that's what we can observe. But when it comes to communication, how they're responding, that's something we need to look into, because by getting all those information and putting it together, we can create a treatment plan that's very specific for that child, and we can get a better result for them and for their family. I hope you get good sense of how we're looking into treatment planning, implementation, and brainstorming when it comes to using reflex integration through play. If this is something you want to learn, hop on and join us in our certification program. We want to support you. If you know of any therapists who can benefit from this, send them this link. We want to support them in any way or form that you are implementing these programs in your sessions. And I wish you all the luck. Before we wrap up, if you're looking for a program that is more holistic, that teaches you not only the academic and the theory, but teaches you how to implement, problem solve, and also work in a community and continue to work your clinical skill and grow your business in the meantime, make sure that you check out the link below to learn more about the RITP Certification Program. See you next time.